So we spent a few hours together this week on a boat in not ideal boating weather. Necessarily, it had been raining all day. It was cold. Fighting Leslie's invited us out. It was a lovely time, as it turned out to be. There were fire pits on the boat, which at first seemed like it was an alarming thing to have on a boat. Fire on a boat does not seem like a good idea. But given the weather, given the evening breezes and being able to gather around fire, it was actually pretty nice. We found out later, to our disappointment, that we were very nearly on a boat with Nico Estevez for a couple of hours, him captive, not able to go anywhere, fielding our questions. Zach from North End Podcast was particularly dismayed that this did not happen, that he did not have the chance to corner our new coach on a floating barge for several hours to pepper him with questions and to become his new best friend.
Yeah, I don't know that it would have been an ideal situation for him because he would have just been surrounded the entire time. That would have been the whole thing. I get the reflex of, oh man, what we missed out on. There will be other opportunities to talk to the guy.
Other boats.
Other boats. He does not seem terribly contact averse when it
No.
comes to dealing with the fan base. Word also seems to have it that he is aggressively pushing on the club to make preseason matches open to the public.
Oh,
Would
that would be
be a
nice.
big change. What he's been able to do and show off so far has been everything that a lot of people have been wanting for a while.
Wearing some big Austin FC logos.
As big as they come.
The biggest possible. Can you make that larger? Can you outfit me with a full body Austin FC logo where there are just holes for my hands and feet and head?
Just a big Austin FC barrel. Nothing else, just a barrel.
How much would that sell for at the Verde store? 70, 80? What do we think? Austin
Thousand
FC commemorative barrel?
is $70,000. It would be extremely,
The Kendra Scott barrel,
yeah, yeah,
$70,000.
diamond encrusted, and they keep it behind the counter, and you only get to pay for it if you
Uh,
pay a deposit.
right. Like a season ticket deposit.
Yeah.
You have to put the bejeweled barrel deposit down like 4 months in advance, and then eventually the barrel comes to you and
Yeah.
disappoints you.
Barrel wouldn't have come in handy on the boat because nobody went overboard. Not even a phone went overboard. Apparently, a
No.
phone almost went overboard.
Oh,
Uh,
really? They had
but
warned against that.
the vibe I got was that
Most
the
of
one
us
that
listened, right?
almost went overboard was attached to maybe folks who were taking more of an advantage of the open bar than some of us were. So
Mhm.
they said to be careful with your phones. We don't want phones going overboard like the whoa, oh no. And then it almost went overboard.
Mm,
So sometimes that just
gotcha.
happens. It was a nice time. We got to chat with some of our colleagues and pals and saw an interesting cross section of Austin FC types, people from Murga, people from LV,
Mhm.
people from Pollo, and of course the Leslies, because it was a Fighting Leslies specific event. It was a nice little hangout, motoring around the dreary, clammy lake.
And we ended up talking about music a lot more than I thought we were going to. Learned some things about some of our brethren and their favorite musical tastes. So that was
And
fun.
you judged them appropriately.
They were perfectly fine musicals.
Look, just because the judgment is in the affirmative doesn't make it less of a judgment. It just, you didn't have anybody to read a riot act to.
Right. You had recommended, and I have not had a chance to listen to this yet because it's been a weird week, but the Kinks soap opera. If you just want to explain like what that is, we can give everybody a little taste of the music recommendations that we gave people.
Explain yourself. It is a Kinks album that I find even lots of Kinks fans are not even aware exists, but it was a concept rock opera album, a sort of celestial being called the Star Maker who descends from rock and roll heaven to trade
Mhm.
places with a regular guy and see what life is like. And there's some
Which
really good songs on there.
which we determined later was also the plot line of a really classic Party Down episode.
Exactly.
Seen Party Down, you need to see that on
Is
whatever streaming service that is on.
I,
That's
I
an
think
amazing
it's
show that is underrated. And
for the longest time it was like you had to have a cable subscription stars, but they
oh, it was a Stars Jam. Yeah.
yeah, it was a stars thing, and the question is like who picked up the redistribution streaming rights to a bunch of their stuff, because somebody might listen to this right now and it's available on
Mhm.
Netflix, and then
Yeah.
3 months from now it's nowhere. And then 3 months
Right.
after that, it's on Hulu. No
Right.
way to know.
Right. Yeah. But if you can find that, definitely find that. So Star Maker, and what one particular, are there any particular tracks that you
Um,
you would point people to, or is it just like a start to finish thing? You have to
it's a
be
start
amidst
to
them.
finish thing. It's
Uh-huh.
very rock opera like.
Kilroy
Everybody's
was here.
Yeah, it starts with everybody's a star and it's solid. Have another drink in parentheses, it'll make you feel better is short but real
Mhm.
good. Yeah, it's very much it is not that long. Listening to it front to back is the experience.
Okay, I'm committing to listening to that soon. And I accosted Landon from Moon Tower with various recommendations. I peppered him with a bunch of things in text after. One of the albums that I talked about was a band called Fiery Furnaces, kind of a mid-aughts band from Chicago, brother sister duo. I threw around words which are accurate descriptions, things like jazz and show tunes. The way that they combine them is really incredible and innovative and a lot of fun and very quirky and very weird. I don't know if he has listened to that. Widow City is the album I recommended. Just fantastic. You kind of can jump around if you want. It's better to listen to it start to finish, but it will take you places that you did not necessarily know that you could go musically. And it's pretty phenomenal. And I think a bunch of you will maybe be curious about this, and maybe one or two of you will really love it as much as I do at the end.
Well, Phil, that's it. You're my cool music guy friend. I just have
Oh,
to take all of your suggestions. As much as I enjoy music, I did not grow up a cool music person. I relied on others for that.
I was lucky enough to be at the University of Washington from 1986 to 1990 and
Hmm.
got to minor in grunge basically
Hmm.
when all that stuff was happening. You know what this conversation is making me realize?
What?
We are deep in the off season.
Emergency podcast. Verde did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, hurry up, shut up, hurry up, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies. And as I realize I should be saying to plug this a little bit better, the official podcast of Verde All Day, the Substack site where Moisés and I talk about Austin FC, write about Austin FC, contemplate Austin FC, and as I did today, unveiled some really fun, cool charts that talked about goals added, some nerdery, and figured out once again that goals added really loves Julio Cascante, and our DPs are kind of underperforming. So, Moisés, how are you doing, and what kind of things have you been thinking about Austin FC wise this week?
I'm good. I'm doing well. I'm continuing to be on the mend from my venture back into goalkeeping after 30 years retired.
I cannot believe that you are still trying to recover from that. That is amazing. It's like we're a few
Sometimes
weeks out of that.
sometimes the dumbest little things that are not like serious injuries are the most annoying, take
Yeah,
forever. That's
yeah,
that's just the way that that goes. But yeah,
yeah.
different MLS executives have been a little bit looser lipped than they should have been about the future of particular tournament
I
formats.
love this time of year.
There are loads of players who are out of contract, free
Hmm.
agents out there in the wind. The emergencies for today, we're going to through some of that free agency stuff, look at the expansion draft, preview tomorrow's MLS Cup
Hmm.
between the
Yep.
Galaxy and the Red Bulls. And
Today, by the time you're listening to
yeah,
this, 3
today by the time
p.m.
you're listening. And as always, anytime the soccer don opens his mouth, there is something
Hmm.
interesting that comes as a result of that. We'll talk about where MLS season pass is and that sort of stuff and other assorted relevant things
Right.
attached to that come through.
Yeah, let's get to it. Let's start, I guess, with the free agency picture. It's a little bit more open now. Last time that we podcasted, we were contemplating the fate of Jeremy Ebobisse for pretty much the whole show. We found out he is available. They declined his option, those idiots. So he is available to a team that wants him. Clearly, we are Jabo stands. We want to see him come to this team. I think it would be interesting. I think it would be good. I don't know that it's necessarily going to happen. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be something that Roto is targeting. But in lieu of that, there are some other interesting free agent names. So we're not going to talk about Abobasi because we have made our views on him eminently clear, but
I
we
do have
will
a
talk
question
about.
for you about him, though.
Okay. Okay.
What is there another team in the league that you think needs him and would want him as bad as we think Austin should? Is there another team that needs him
Ah.
up top as much as Austin does? Do you think there's actually competition?
I mean, that's a really good question because I think a lot of teams are set for striker, but if you're looking at him as veteran depth piece and you have the ability to bring him in as a number two striker, and I still do think that there are teams that could theoretically use him. Cincinnati just dropped a wad of cash on new hotshot striker, but I could see again, just given some of the stuff that they've done, they let go of some players who are decent strikers, and Oriano is still with the team, but obviously might be somebody who would be moving on to Europe. So I could see a team like that possibly. I could see the Union. That would be a place where he could theoretically go and do some good things. I could see Atlanta being interested in him. I do think that there are some destinations. I do think there are some places where he would make a lot of sense. But again, and what he is ultimately is a, to me at least, I think of him as a better, younger version of Zardes in terms of what they thought Zardes was going to be when they signed him. And if they, again, I think they'd have to use the buyout, but if they did that, because they make around the same salary, but I do think Abobasi has a little bit more potential to bounce back the way that Zardes and Rubio have not. And he's had some really good seasons. He's not far removed from a 17-goal season a year after he was suffering from concussions and then figured it out. He is the Q caller now, and he's, again, I think he's a player that could really come in. He can play wing. He's much better as a center forward, but I think he is somebody who could come in and plug in and make a discernible difference right away, even if, again, I think getting a primate striker who is DP level, I think is paramount for Austin FC, but I do think that he is somebody who could come in and do a good job. And maybe you spend that other DP on an actual 10 and you put Driussi into a true second striker role and do a system where that kind of thing would work. Again, I don't know exactly how Estevez is going to play out, what Burrell wants to do, but again, Abobasi to me is really tempting.
Yeah, I agreed on all points. I guess moving on to our list of various people from across the league, a preponderance of folks from one team in particular. We're starting off, however, with a name that is well known to the Austin fan base, and that is Felipe Martins, who is out of contract at Orlando.
I was so tickled when I saw that he was available. I forgot that was going to happen. I think they should bring him back just for vibes.
Yeah, keep the guy employed. He was trying to fundraise using a GoFundMe to help fund his mom's cancer treatment. He's a journeyman player. He is a
Mhm.
vibes guy. He is a locker room guy. He is not just well liked by the fan base, but well liked by a lot of the players that previously played with him at Austin. It feels like the perfect deployment of that supplemental roster.
Can you imagine him and Rubio in the same locker room?
Oh, him and Rubio on the same field at the same time?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Like it would be, let's be clear, gaslighting is not a good thing.
I want this so much now.
But
Now
shithousing.
that we're speaking it into being, I want this so much.
Yeah, Felipe and Diego together feel like the new Bash Brothers of MLS.
Uh-huh.
That's
Yeah,
what it feels like. Is the two incomparable actors from different parts of South America, just ready to absolutely wreck things. Yeah,
Supplemental, and we'll donate a bunch of jellyfish money to your GoFundMe. Make it happen.
and so in I guess a related jovial tone, something that we mentioned before we started recording. Atlanta is in discussions with Tyler Wolff.
Okay.
And if those discussions fell through, as a what if that's absolutely not going to happen, what if Austin fixed some of its striker problem by bringing in Tyler Wolff? And as many members of the Wolff family, aside from their father, that can be part of the organization would then be part of the organization for a long time, just for the novelty of it. I was very
Mhm.
team pro Wolfpack of get all three of those boys on the
Right.
same team. One up top, one in the midfield, and one in the defensive line. And that to me is more interesting than LeBron and his kid playing together on the same
Uh,
team. It'd
I
be
have a
fun.
brother. I'm definitely pro brothers spending time together. I have a lot of fun with my brother. I'm going to be going to New Orleans right after Christmas to spend some time with my brother, as a matter of fact. So, and I think that getting as many Wolves as possible in the same team is entertaining, but does Tyler Wolf really fix the striker problems that
No,
Austin
I don't
FC
know that he
has?
does. Don't know that he does. Actually, serious as I think we were about Felipe. We were not really being
Yeah,
serious about that one. Are we going to be serious about Kip Keller, whose option was declined at FCC?
we are not.
We're not.
I
So
think
he's
he's USL
available,
bound.
Phil.
I think USL is his destination. I think that's his calling.
Here he goes to the Las Vegas Lights, maybe,
Yeah,
you know.
maybe. Sure.
Um,
Indy
and
11. That feels like his vibe.
also available on the heels of Cincinnati not doing anything with a loan expiring Nico Gioacchini. What do we think about
Little
him?
intriguing. It's intriguing. He had some flashes at St. Louis. He's a player that I think would be interesting in the Austin system. Might be worth a look. I don't know what it's going to require. Again, the thing is, the problem is that you've got two strikers that are not producing. If you bring him in, again, this would be a dislodge Zardes, bring him in with some sort of replacement who could do some interesting and different things. And I think Giacchini is a player that could do that, but I think it does hinge on a Zardes buyout to bring him in to make him make sense. If he's the only striker that you're bringing in the offseason, that to me doesn't make as much sense. But he's a good player. He's an interesting player. I don't know by himself how transformative he's going to be.
Also, a result of an expiring loan at FCC, Kevin Kelsey. What do we think
Yeah. And
about him, Phil?
again, the thing I'm curious about him is if he would still be able to retain his U22 status. He's a striker that showed a lot of promise. He came in and I'm a little surprised that it didn't work out. But again, FCC was trying to replace Brandon Vasquez and Kelsey wasn't quite a like for like substitute for that. And Bupenza didn't work out as they thought he would. I understand the kind of impulse for Cincinnati's front office to just say, we are going to spend a lot of money at striker and make sure that we get somebody who is guaranteed to score a lot of goals, which again, probably something that Austin should be doing right now, probably a way that Burrell should be focused. But if there is, again, if there's a way to say, bring in a primate striker, we know that we're going to buy Zardes out. And again, if he's U22 eligible, that makes a ton of sense to bring somebody in like that, take a flyer on him, see what he can do in the system.
And
What do you think?
I,
Do you have
I
any thoughts?
I don't really have much of anything to add on those guys. I think that the thing that's interesting about them as a collection, which I think is what you were alluding to, is that there are reasons why other teams did not exercise options, make an effort to pick up guys once their loans expired, that kind of thing. There are reasons that these spare parts are available. What I think will be interesting is if they do end up picking up guys with similar profiles to this who
Mhm.
are not the shiniest things in the drawer, but could be shined up or could be just the right fit to what the overall plan is. It'll be interesting and telling as to what other moves we can probably anticipate in the winter window. When we have some of the puzzle pieces put together in the jigsaw, we have a better idea where we are. Oh,
Real
God.
quick, Kevin Kelsey is 20. And so he would
Earl,
be
we can
U22
fix him.
eligible.
We can fix him.
He's also Venezuelan.
We can fix him. We can fix him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay. All right.
that seems good, right?
Now I'm 1,000% on board. Make Kevin Kelsey happen.
Which means you are keeping Downey if you're doing that.
Yep. Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
maybe that's fine.
Maybe that's fine. The next one, this is a prominent name from across the league.
Mhm.
I feel like I could quote that Continental Tire commercial from memory now. Is a Ilie
Mhm.
Sanchez, who is out of contract
That,
at LAFC.
yeah, that to me is really intriguing because, again, I don't know how many miles he has left on those tires. See what I did there. But I think that he could stabilize at the defensive midfield position pretty well. I feel like he's still got a few years left. I don't know what LAFC's got planned necessarily. Maybe they've got a DM target in mind who would make more sense, who maybe is more prime age, but I think he'd be a really fascinating addition to this team. And I think that he would stabilize that kind of connection between the back line and the midfield in a way that Alex Ring had some great qualities, but I think that there are some things that Ilie could do that Ring wasn't even able to do. And I'm intrigued. I think it's definitely worth exploring. Yeah,
I,
you got to
I
lose the headband, but
yeah.
I think that
Well,
we should maybe,
you know what? Hey, if he earns it, let him keep the headband. Make it contingent on performance. You play well
okay.
enough, you keep the headband. Otherwise, goes out in the garbage. A guy who's out of contract, who is a free agent, beggars can't be choosers. But to an
Mhm.
extent, players of his level with his kinds of stats can go, well, if I get roughly the same kind of offer from NYCFC, I'd rather
Mhm.
be in New York than in Austin. Anytime there's a player from LAFC, from LA Galaxy, which is technically a Los Angeles team, Inter Miami, New York City, when a hot shot player comes out of contract at one of those clubs or comes available, they're not necessarily going to be super down to do the, what SKC tried to do with Cristiano Ronaldo and convince him that Kansas City was really hopping and exactly where he wanted to be. That lots of fun Saturday nights to be had in Kansas City. With Ilie, I don't have a good enough read on him as a person to get whether being on one of those big coastal teams is an environment thing that he wants, or if at
Mhm.
the end of the day, nobody is willing to pay him as well or treat him as well as an Austin that could really use a solid D mid, even if he is in the discount tire analogy, getting toward the level 3 or level 4 on his tread, where he's almost out of the warranty.
You should really change this in the next 2 to 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
you should.
he's
Yeah,
34. He is 34. He made 1.267 last year. So that's again, he obviously, if he's out of contract, you're renegotiating. He probably is expecting to take some kind of cut at this stage in his career. Maybe this is Cascante Vicenen level money. If you can dislodge one of those guys and you can offer him that, maybe he comes here for that to extend. Maybe you do a 1+1 kind of contract. It's intriguing. I think, again,
yeah.
especially with Ring out and with that decision being made, I don't know if necessarily you see something in Ilie that you didn't see in Ring and you're willing to do that kind of thing, or is it where you want to get younger at that position overall? And like Valencia didn't do that for you either. So again, what they're going to do at that position, I'm not quite clear, but it is an intriguing, at least like short-term plug the gap kind of player.
Next up, we've got another big club. Yes, I'm calling Columbus a big club,
Okay.
thanks to Wilfred Nancy. No other reason other than the fact that's where Wilfred Nancy coaches.
Right.
Yo-Yo option declined at the Crew after scoring the winning goal in the 2023
Yep.
MLS Cup.
Yep. Yep.
How
Yep.
disrespectful kind of sporting organ. I take back what I just said about Columbus. I used to love
Mhm.
them. I'm such a big fan of them, as Phil. I frankly,
Always been a fan.
I'll go so far as to say I dislike Columbus for this disrespectful move. How could they do this?
Only for this reason. Like you were on board until they made this
Only
move.
for this
Yeah,
reason.
again, and again, he's kind of primarily a winger, but he can play wing back and he played wing back a lot in Nancy's system. If we are thinking about, and again, I don't know where ultimately the Esteves preferred lineup is going to shake out, but if there are inclinations of like a 3-5-2 to kind of solve the where do you play Driussi kind of situation, and what do you do with Biru and Gallagher, and then if you add Yaboa to the mix, I think 3-5-2 all of a sudden becomes kind of an interesting way to play for this team. I don't know that necessarily that accounts for kind of like everybody in the roster and activating them, but I do think it's interesting that you all of a sudden have a player that does have this capability that is now available. I certainly think you have to give pause if you are thinking about deploying wingbacks and you have this wingback that is decently accomplished and still probably can give some effort. I don't know. Again, it's intriguing. I don't know that it's necessarily the right answer. I don't know that it's necessarily what we would necessarily want Burrell to do, but I do think it is worth at least some discussion.
And the last name that we got on the list is one that I added. And I started following this player not because I only care about people of the exact same ethnic extraction that I am, but he's been a Western Conference player,
Doesn't
and
hurt though, right? Doesn't hurt though, right?
He's the only Chinese Cuban player in MLS.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's enough to get me, oh, hey, it's interesting that that guy exists. And then I followed him, and he's not bad. He's not bad. And that's
Mhm.
Michael Chang, who is out of
Yeah.
contract at RSL. And
Mhm.
I threw him onto the list because I think he's representative of these are the potential diamonds in the rough supplemental roster spot kind of situations where you look at his age, you
Mhm.
look at how much tread is left on the tires. That is definitely a
Mhm.
consideration. MLS is a retirement league. Look, every league is a retirement league in some respect, but I think the most respectable way that MLS is a retirement league is players who play a significant amount of years of their
Mhm.
senior career or all of their senior career in MLS. Um, there are teams that can definitely get some juice out of those mid to late 30s years that are left on
Mhm.
guys that don't play up top, who by the time they get to that age really have run the rubber almost all the way down on
Mhm.
the tire analogy that will not die tonight. So yeah, what do you think, looking at his stats, looking at his contributions, looking at what he's capable of, what do you
Mhm.
think about a player like this as an option for Austin?
I think as a supplemental, it could make some sense because again, I mean, if you're burning a senior roster spot on somebody who we were looking at his stats, I mean, he's not really producing like goal wise anymore. Not to say that he couldn't still grab the occasional goal, but he hasn't scored in the last 2 seasons, which to me is a little bit concerning. But I mean, if you're looking at somebody late game to run at defenses, this might be someone who could help a little bit. If he had about shade under 400 minutes this past season, 1,000 like the year before. So I don't know if this is like really somebody who is like truly in decline or if on a supplemental another lease on life we could get some things out of him. With tire analogies, this doesn't excite me as much as if we did get Ilie, I could just be insufferable by yelling what a smart choice by Ilie every time that he did like anything good or bad on the field. That would be something that would entertain the entire press box for the entire season because I would go to that well again and again. And I don't necessarily see that like Chang offers the same sort of, you know.
Yeah,
There's nothing that I think I could really like yell that
yeah,
would, but that's just selfish me. I think it's intriguing. I mean, again, as a supplemental player, sure, you've got some veteran while you've got an ability to bring somebody in late game who could, again, if you are still retaining Zardes and Rubio at least to start the season, there is some likelihood that one of them would be injured. And at that point, if you do need a third choice striker, you could plug him into the roster and he would be serviceable. But again, if you're talking about a senior roster spot, then I don't think that makes
yeah.
sense. I mean, I think that every senior roster spot needs to be spent on somebody who is going to be a difference maker.
That's all we have for our free agency stuff, which could be completely irrelevant 72 hours from now when the trade
Maybe.
window opens for half a day. So
Uh,
maybe we were incredibly prescient. Maybe we were incredibly off base. But one thing is for certain, Phil, but this year
yes.
there is going to be an expansion draft.
So there is that half day trade window that happens on Monday. And then on Tuesday, we learn which players are unprotected for the expansion draft, which is happening on Wednesday. Of course, San Diego gets to pick 5 players. And I know that a lot of other folks out there have done really good work in terms of their expansion draft thoughts, pulling the rosters together, thinking about who is it that we are going to protect. Ultimately, that is Roto's choice. We're not going to do a protected list like everybody else has been
Nope.
doing. We're going to do, actually, I saw this on the Lowe's Paradise Slack. I saw this and was thinking about this myself. The idea of dangling CJ Fodre, who I've talked about as like a possible trade Chip to San Diego because, again, he's from San Diego. There's a chance for a little bit of PR juice, prodigal son returns, blah, blah, blah. But maybe there's a way to trade him contingent on San Diego picking an expansion draft pick for Austin, and then like Kamal Miller happened, right? So we
Yeah.
picked Kamal Miller and then immediately moved him to Montreal, which made sense because he is a Canadian international. Getting him back to Canada made sense. I think Montreal knew that. I think that kind of worked out for everybody, except he turned out to be a really good center back, and it probably would have behooved Austin to keep Kamal Miller rather than turn him into some Gam and Freddie Kleeman, which is how that worked out with the draft pick that they got. But again, just kind of idea of, do you say, okay, Fodry, you can go home. It's been great developing you, but we think that there might be somebody in the expansion draft that would actually help now rather than helping a couple of years down the road. What do you think of this idea?
I think that is based on the way that Roto's done business so far. I think
Mhm.
it's directly in line with the kind of stuff that he would do. If folks have rightly predicted that he ends up doing this, then
Mhm.
it means that people are getting used to the methodology and they're getting more into the methodology and they're
Right.
in the kitchen with Roto, seeing the way that he moves. And it's not that I want a predictable sporting director, it's that I want a sporting director whose decisions make sense. And I
Right.
don't have to twist myself in a pretzel to do that. Doing exactly this kind of gambit with CJ, I think would be wise. And it would also go to stuff that he said about making sure that the player is happy where they are, getting the minutes that they want, getting the kind of life that they want. And if he thinks that CJ is very instrumental in the future of the club overall and does not want to let him go if he can avoid it, okay, great. I get it. Fine. Sure. But if he sees there being a greater opportunity to shore up something that they
Mhm.
need more help on with him as the cost, I don't see him hesitating in
Right.
making that kind of a move.
This reminds me of the situation where Obrian was available in the reentry draft and Austin still had the rights to Kip Keller, and Roto did some kind of trading maneuvers to get into the number one spot to guarantee that they would get the player that they wanted in the reentry draft. I thought that was going to be Arias. Again, going back to the wingback thing, I thought that, oh, okay, this is a play to get this good, solid, interesting fullback, wingback player who could transform in that way. But no, he wanted Obrian as a speedy winger, and it all made sense when it unfurled over those few days. But just to see that trade that precluded this was kind of a signal, I think, on Rota's part that, okay, I
Yeah.
know these league rules. I know how to do this. And maybe we don't necessarily need this number one draft pick, but I'm going to show off a little bit to get it. So again, if there is some deal for Fodry that we learn about with the expansion draft, like all of a sudden San Diego picks this player that doesn't seem like it's going to fit any of their needs. And then all of a sudden we learn about this trade. It's going to be like, oh, okay. Yeah. So Roto is showing that he knows the game and Fodry gets to go home. We've had a great time seeing him develop here and then get a player who might really, again, make a big difference. Because again, still kind of smarting a little bit from 4 years ago from the expansion draft that Austin had, where it was a pretty terrible expansion draft in retrospect.
Yeah.
I know the Moon Tower guys were talking about this kind of idea of, oh, how did we think that Claudio Reyna was really good at his job after this expansion draft that we had?
Yeah. The less said about Claudio Reyna, the better.
Oh, I don't know.
um,
I think there's a contingent of Verde All Day Nation that would relish some Claudio Reyna talk, but we won't
yeah.
go there necessarily
Yeah.
this time.
What we will talk about, however, is MLS Cup, which we are right on the heels of experiencing between
Indeed.
the two teams that MLS front office and Commissioner Garber definitely wanted to be the final two teams in the playoffs. 1000%. They were dreaming about a Galaxy Red Bulls final all year. And the more I joke about that, the more I go, actually, this is a pretty interesting matchup, adding
Mhm.
the drama of Riqui Puig tearing his ACL, which
Mhm.
we have not been exactly quiet about our mutual dislike of Riqui Puig as a player, as a sportsman. But this sucks. This is not great. If Galaxy lose, you don't want to see them lose because they were missing this one crucial mega player. You
Right.
wrote a really great piece about goals added involving Riqui Puig and looking at the dynamics of stuff, which people should go read on the Substack. But I guess what I would pose to you, Phil, as we head
Mhm.
into this, absent Riqui Puig, what other things lose this for the Galaxy, who are favored to win, who we both think are going to win even without Riqui Puig? What ways can they fall down and fall flat and let the Red Bulls stampede?
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, yeah, and first of all, with Riqui Puig, I mean, I love watching him as a player. I mean, I know that we have, from time to time, obviously, especially with West Coast games, we're up, we're watching, we're waiting for press conferences to start, and oftentimes when we've been doing that, Galaxy games have been on, and that's what we've been gravitating towards, in part just to watch him in action. I mean, yes, he tucks in his shirt, he's kind of an annoying twerp. We did not like him in the last Austin Galaxy game, obviously, with Biru versus Riqui, and then obviously Delgado versus Bukhari. There's not a lot of love that we have necessarily for Riqui and for the Galaxy, but he's a transcendental player.
Yeah.
He's so much fun to watch. The way that he's orchestrated that offense. Again, yeah, Messi just got announced as the MVP, and I love that there are a lot of people out there who are like, oh, I don't think Messi should deserve this, even though he's the greatest player of all time. If I had a vote in the MVP, just judging on regular season, I would have said Cucho, just because he
Yeah.
was such a difference maker for that team. But
But Riqui
if you
would have been
look
in the
at
running.
kind of,
He would have been in the running, right?
oh yeah, but he was the weird thing was he wasn't a finalist. But
Yeah.
if you look at the playoffs and what he did there, and then you look back, and again, a lot of the reason that the Galaxy is where they are is because they got Gabriel Peck and Joseph Paintsel in the offseason, and they've been completely transformative. And then they've also unlocked some things in Joveljic that like really make that frontline gel in a way that they didn't, last year when they had Diego Fagundes and Tyler Boyd as their wingers, right? So it's a whole different level. They went out and they got those players purposefully because they knew that they needed to. There's an analogy floating around out there about Riqui Puig as this elite quarterback and needing wide receivers, and that's what Paintsel and Peck were. Again, I think the way that the Red Bulls win is that they do a low block, which they're certainly capable of doing, and then whoever is trying to be that Riqui Puig replacement, be it Fagundes, be it Mark Delgado, be it Marco Royce if he's healthy. Yeah, I think shutting that down and closing off those avenues to the front three is how the Red Bulls are going to win. And then they're going to get just some sort of, set piece goal, or they're going to get some kind of counter goal or something along those lines and win 1-0 in a really ugly fashion. So, I mean, I think if the Galaxy win, what they're going to do is they're just simply going to out talent the Red Bulls, and they're going to find a way to break whatever kind of press or low block that the Red Bulls throw at them. And again, Peck, given the season that he's had, certainly capable of a moment of brilliance. Paintsel, certainly capable of a moment of brilliance. I would love, just for all the good times that we had with Diego Fagundes, to see him start this game and to see him do something really special in this. I do, given where, and again, the Red Bulls have been this long-suffering fan base, and I know people out there, and I would love for them to a certain degree to win this, but given the year that the Galaxy had, and the fans and doing the boycott and all that, the whole Klein out movement, to see them win after just kind of the challenges that they had last year, and then just the incredible turnaround that they had, again proving that yes, if you have an excellent person in the front office like Will Kuntz, if he's getting difference making players, and if there's a plan in place, and you have faith in a coach giving them the right players, as they did with Greg Vanney, like I want to see that work for them. And again, I think it'd be much more delicious and putting a bow on it nicely if Riqui Puig was able to play in this game, but I'm sure that he'll be on the sidelines, and to see the Galaxy win that, and then to have him involved somehow in the post-match celebrations, which I'm sure will happen. Yeah, I think would be pretty magical. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. Of course, this is going on at the same time that Texas is playing the SEC championship. So I don't know how many of you are going to actually be watching this, but I do think, I do think that there's a pretty interesting storyline either way that could happen in this. Either you have this like OG franchise and Red Bulls, who have only been in the finals once, all of a sudden winning against all odds, nobody believed in us, blah blah blah, or you have the Galaxy and just this return to glory after a pretty miserable 2023. And then maybe it inspires people like Rodolfo Borrell at Austin to go spend on players in the offseason and have the same kind of turnaround that the Galaxy have had.
I'm with you. Like I think there is something interesting to be had whichever way the result goes. I feel like the away team winning is always its own kind of like a sort of upset joy for a neutral that is
Uh-huh.
really delicious, but specifically because it's Red Bulls, because it's one of the original
Yeah,
franchises that got an energy
right.
drink slapped all over them. If they win this, I feel like the scenes for them, it's not winning the sixth one, it's winning the
Mhm.
one.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like that's why I'm kind of edging out that, thinking that the Red Bulls win would be more interesting to watch and joyous and jubilant for the folks who bought tickets on the aftermarket, or the 700 or so that the Red Bulls front office managed to
Mhm.
secure tickets for. Um,
Right.
I think it's gonna be a great game, and I'm glad that I don't care about sports other than this version of football. I don't have any games to worry about. Let
I did not think that I would be worrying about the SEC as I am now. I have a degree from an SEC school, which I did not think that was not the plan. When I decided to do my MFA at Texas, I did not say, "Oh, I am so glad I'm in the SEC." That was not what I had envisioned, but here we
yeah.
are.
Um, so the state of things, Phil, the state of the
Mhm.
league. We
Yeah.
had a state of the league address, hat tip to Ben Wright.
Yep.
We got some interesting stuff out of this, but preceding it, here within the last week, Ernst Tanner at Philadelphia made a mention of how Philadelphia was not going to be playing in Leagues Cup this year. And
Mhm.
when asked about it in a press conference, FCC's GM Chris Albright said that Ernst spilled the beans, which sure does sound like corroboration if you're looking for corroboration.
Uh,
There are changes afoot for Leagues Cup. So let's talk about the
yeah.
notion of working to refine the format, and that there will be more direct MLS versus Liga MX matches as a result, which is
Yeah. So
music to my ears.
right, right. So Ben Wright, who's an excellent follow, by the way, on Blue Sky now. Yeah, so he was live skeeting, I guess is the variant.
Yep.
It's not live tweeting, it's
Yep.
live
Skeet, skeet,
skeeting.
skeet, skeet, skeet,
He
skeet, skeet,
was,
skeet.
yeah, he was following Garber's State of the League address, and brought forth some pretty interesting things that Garber was saying. I mean, again, a lot of it was, just kind of Garber defending, oh yeah, our schedule's great. It's good that all the games are at the same time. We have plenty of viewers. That was a little weird, but he did get into Leagues Cup a little bit, and this was something I've seen this kind of floating around from some league reporters as well. But again, this kind of idea that next year Leagues Cup might be 18 MLS teams and then the 18 Liga MX teams, right? So it wouldn't be this kind of everybody from both leagues in and matchups that you don't care about. The one thing that was really beautiful about what Garber was saying here is that we said they're working to refine the League's Cup format, and this is according to Ben's live skeet, and more direct MLS versus Liga MX matches as a result, which again, that's ultimately why we have Leagues Cup. That's what we want. We want to see those kind of matchups. We want to see how the two leagues measure up in direct competition. If you are watching a Leagues Cup game, you do not want to see Dallas play Kansas City again. You see that plenty of times in MLS Cup. That's fine. If you're fans of those teams, so be it. They're quasi rivals. If you are a neutral watching those games, sometimes they're entertaining because it's MLS, if it's after dark. But some of the times, frankly, those games are not going to be as engaging as, say if you have Dallas playing Monterrey, or if you have, Kansas City playing Chivas. You want to see how the leagues match up against each other. And I think anything that's going to kind of drive more of those league versus league matchups, I think that's what you want. We've been kind of trying to, you know, behind the scenes. I know we've talked about this here before. We've tried to fix Leagues Cup in our own way to guarantee that there are going to be kind of more of these things. So we'll kind of see if maybe some of the ideas that we've had and have floated around out here like actually manifest, or if they come up with something else. But I'm pretty encouraged by this.
Yeah, I guess to jump ahead because it's related to this. Looking
Yeah.
at how are they going to schedule this? We got confirmation
Mhm.
that they are going to take off for the World Cup in 2026, and they'll take off a
Right. Which
portion
is
for the Club World Cup this year, 2025, this coming year.
right.
Granted,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
still 3 weeks out. Calm down. I need to calm down. It's not 2025 yet. But that we're going to get specifics in the next week. Hey, we may have specifics before the next time we record.
Yeah.
News keeps breaking. Maybe we'll have something resembling a regular recording schedule as a result. If they give us stuff
Right.
to do, then
Or
why
even an
not?
emergency.
Yeah.
Maybe there's an
So,
emergency.
what do you think? What do you think about taking off for a portion of Club World Cup, which has some solid MLS representation in there?
I think that makes sense because you've got those teams that are not going to be able to. I mean, you can't expect the Sounders or Inter Miami to shuttle between Club World Cup games and the regular season. So I think that that does make sense. And I do think that they are trying to make Club World Cup happen and make it a thing. And I think that there is potential for that to be a pretty interesting tournament. There is some kind of scuttlebutt about the TV deal that they got and how that's maybe tied into Saudi Arabia getting awarded the World Cup and things like that. There's a really good New York Times piece on that earlier in the week. So if you find that, check that out. But I do think that, yeah, that makes sense. And again, I think we've talked about this before. If you could compress Leagues Cup into like 2.5 weeks and get more of those like league versus league matchups,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. And I think that's like what you should have and what you should do. It should not be something where everybody's involved. It's really tough to get fans of all of these teams to care about this tournament. I do think streamlining it is the right inclination. And again, yeah, we've wondered about this too. Like 2026, how are you going to do Leagues Cup plus again World Cup plus the regular season and the playoffs? And again, I would not be shocked if there was not. I think maybe at least for 26, maybe not like as a permanent thing, but I think at least for that year, I think that you are going to see a more compressed playoff schedule. I don't think that you're going to see a best of 3 first round series. I just don't think that you could do it with all the additional games that you're going to have. I just don't think that that makes sense.
Here's the thing that I'll lay my bet down on is that part of this part of the juicy thing that we will get out of this is whether they are
Uh-huh.
making the full schedule shift, because that plays into this too, whether
Oh
they
yeah.
shift to the European schedule.
Okay, yeah, that would be a time to do that, certainly. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense if they decided that all of a sudden, yeah, we are gonna break for summer and then we're gonna do maybe they do a half season or something. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna work that necessarily, but yeah, I mean, it does seem like if they are gonna go to more of like an August to May format or do what Liga MX does, I don't know that they're gonna split it into half seasons necessarily and have that kind of same look. I think it might be more like what happens in Germany, where they just have like a really, really extended winter break and just keep the season rolling. But yeah, I mean that is the natural time to do that. That's where you're going to obviously not alienate fans because you're going to get obviously a lot of people that are watching World Cup are excited will hopefully funnel into the next MLS season. And if you can actually start a season and have it be a 26-27 season, then
Yeah.
that's great. That's the way to launch that kind of shift. And again, being in Austin, obviously not having matches in June and July and parts of August is fine. For fans in Seattle and Minneapolis, that kind of sucks because those are optimal times to go watch soccer in those cities. But again, the entire planet's heating up. I think it's fine. I think you want to avoid summer the way that we try to avoid being outside in summer. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Just one thing left from Garber's remarks. He declined to share Apple TV subscription numbers, but says that they're
Yep.
pleased with them. We have over 1 million viewers watching those games on a Saturday night. That's more than we've ever
Really?
had watching a regular season match. That number has
Uh-huh.
grown for our playoff games. So yeah, I guess as we close things out, let's. How do you feel about the MLS season pass experiment. As much of it as we have been privy to, we saw the range of broadcasters that they had chopped in
Mhm.
between the first year and the second year.
Yeah.
They're doing, a little bit less of the wrap up programming. It seems they're encouraging, aka telling different clubs to crank out content for this. That
Mhm.
completely dropped off after the first season. What
Right.
do you think the state of the season pass relationship is from where you sit, Phil?
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical about what Garber's saying with the numbers. Again, I think that it would behoove the league to have more times for games, even if they are just single games. I understand kind of the logistics of, yes, we're going to put everything at Saturday night. That does make a certain sort of sense. But again, a lot of the fans of this league who would watch multiple games in a weekend don't have the opportunity to do that because they are in their home stadiums or they're watching their team on the road. Again, MLS 360 is an interesting concept, but I don't know that a lot of people necessarily are watching that, especially when commercials intrude on that. For me, I've tried that a little bit on away nights before and after Austin games, and I generally just find myself wanting to choose a game and follow that. If you had a Friday night game, if you had a Saturday afternoon game, if you had a couple of day games on Sunday, I would be much happier as a fan because I would be able to watch more teams. When it's an Austin game, I'm locked in. I'm reporting on it. I'm writing about it. I'm watching with all of you. I'm going to a post-match press conference. So my ability to watch other teams is curtailed as a result of that. And I really would want the opportunity as a fan of the whole league to watch more of those. But I will say that in terms of the product, in terms of the visuals, I think it's great. I would love if we would get kind of crews with every team and let them do whenever they're hosting rather than have these kind of crews float around and have to learn things anew about different teams every week. I think it would be much better. This is never going to happen again, obviously, because of the way that their paths have diverted. But if you had an Adrian Healy and a Mike LaHood doing all the Austin FC home games, and then you're going to have the home crews for whichever teams Austin's playing on the road, I think that that would be more cohesive in terms of a broadcast, and you would really get a sense of, first of all, that kind of institutional knowledge about the team that only a partnership like an Adrian and Mike working with the team can truly have.
Yeah.
And then you also get really kind of the flavor of, yes, you are on the road, you are away, you are the enemy if you are listening to the broadcast for homers from another team. But again, still giving you some insights that you're not going to get from a crew that has just dropped in and is learning things about the team on the fly.
I hear you, but as you alluded to, the horse being all the way out of the barn on that,
True.
I think the most that we can hope for is that the further spread of MLS as, yes, a league worth paying attention to, yes, a league worth watching, results in more of these league commentators really getting familiar with the whole league that they could be
Sure.
commentating on rather than just, panic blasting through the notes that they're given. And I think that look, here, I'll shout out our colleague Katie Goodman, who played with us in the Media Cup, up and
Yeah.
coming commentator who knows this league, knows USL, knows NWSL. They should be looking for broadcasters who maybe don't have the length of resume calling MLS games, but who know MLS, the league, really,
Right.
and aren't just looking at this as a gig in addition to hopefully, politicking their way into, this or that thing for CBS or something like that. I feel like the more they can invest in maybe not, locking broadcast teams to given home teams, but locking in really talented up and coming broadcasters who know the material, that will pay off in terms of dividends for them way better than here's this person who is a particular name. As many things as I might say about Taylor Twellman, he does at least know the league. I don't love that at his elevated sort of status,
Mhm.
there is this kind of propensity for putting on a persona and trying to notch their way into the broadcaster hall of fame and are focused more on how great is this going to sound on my sizzle reel.
Mhm.
rather than just focusing on calling the game. That's the thing to me, is let the MLS nerds rise to the top, not as much the
Mhm.
jocks. And that's not against players. I love players on commentary, former players,
Mhm.
retired players. Diego Rubio, for example. I think Diego Rubio could be one of the absolute best Spanish or English language
Mhm.
soccer broadcasters that MLS could draw off of. People who really know the league, really know these players, really know these dynamics. That's what I want going into the third year of this.
Mhm. Yeah, like Max and Dunny, for example, they're a really good team. Dunny knows the league really well. Max knows the league really well. They definitely have connections to specific teams and they've cultivated that a lot, but they're definitely able to drop in and understand narratives and they're able to portray that and they have good personalities and they're interesting. And I think that, yeah, there are opportunities to cultivate that. Certainly, I think that that is going to evolve, but it would also be nice to have more and more people exposed to those teams as well, right? So, and again, when you are putting all the teams against one another in counter programming and you're not having opportunities to space those out and have like kind of game of the week situations every week where you have everybody like is able to watch one broadcast, then I do think that that overall hurts the product. Even though, yes, there is a reliability. Okay, Saturday at 7:30, unless there's like a crushing heat wave, when it's 8:30, that there's going to be an Austin FC game if it is in Central Time, right? So, and if it's on the West Coast, that you're going to have a 9:30 kick or a 9:40 kick, and then you're going to be up past midnight if you are doing a press conference. Not to complain about anything that I might have to do. Do get sure a predictability about it, but I would love an opportunity for Austin and Dallas to play like a 1 p.m. Sunday game and let everybody else witness the hate flowing through the various fans and all that for just one kind of momentary glimpse in whatever kind of mid-season form these teams happen to be in.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me too, is expanding access to these games for people with families. That's the thing.
Yeah,
People say, "Oh, they're all playing at this time." Well, I guess my kid isn't going to go to any more games with me.
right, right. Yeah, as we learned last week, 7-year-olds need their sleep and can't necessarily stay up to watch a playoff game that starts at 9:30 Central.
Well, Phil, that's it. That's all we got until most of what
Okay,
we
good.
talked about is completely contradicted within 72 hours or so. And I guess
Beautiful.
we'll be back when we've got more to talk about. You have anything else, Phil?
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely next week. I think it's going to be an interesting week. I think we're finally going to see some things move. I would suspect that we're going to know about a new Austin FC player one way or the other sometime in this next week. So that excites me, just being able to have those
Yeah.
kind of narratives again. It's been interesting to just be able to, look back at the season and do some analysis and then look at the playoffs and how they're manifesting and all that. But yeah, I'm eager to talk about changes at Austin FC and other than people like Terry Boss getting jobs, right? He went over to Lexington. I know that you wanted to mention him. Any thoughts there before we leave
I
it?
I think that's cool. It'd be interesting to see Davy Arnaud mention that he would be down to hang around if they wanted to have him. This was before Nico got hired. It'll be interesting to see if some other assistants of Josh's end up going to their own head coaching jobs within the next couple weeks. I don't think there's a compelling reason to go with a change with the next pro team, but I don't know where Roto's head is on that. And if he's happy with the job Brett Utley's doing, my hope is he continues to be the coach there. He seems really happy and actually really
Mhm.
likes being on the developmental side of coaching. Um,
Right. But the other thing too that we've talked about too is what if there is some kind of opportunity for Utley to climb the ladder?
yeah.
What if there is USL Championship team or USL League One team that wants to take a flyer on him and he
Hmm.
sees that as an opportunity to move to where he really wants to move? Obviously, Next Pro is an intriguing league and he's had, two pretty remarkable years here, I would say, but I don't think that this is necessarily where his road ends, right?
Yeah.
So, again, there's the opportunity to see him maybe move somewhere else as well. And then again, just that kind of floating question out there about where's Josh Wolf going to end up? Is he going to just be hanging out and golfing for the next year? Or is there going to be some opportunity? Is he going to have the itch to coach again? Because again, I would be curious to kind of see where he ends up and the opportunity to, maybe reach out to a press person at a team and say, hey, I know Josh pretty well. Curious about talking to him about this new gig. What do you say?
It feels like now is around the time that MLS teams are going to be making those moves because they want to have their
Right.
coaches set as they are making roster changes, which aren't contingent on having the coach, but they know who's out of a job and who's available. Maybe we will have way more to talk about next week than we currently think.
I mean, not that we haven't had things to talk about, but more
Yeah,
directly
Fiery
Austin
Furnaces
FC
are
adjacent
albums
things.
and stuff. Yeah.
Right, exactly. All right. Okay, well that's we're gonna leave it here. Thanks so much for listening again. Verde All Day is where you can find us. Obviously, if you are enjoying what you're hearing on the podcast, let people know. If you're enjoying what you're reading in Verde All Day, let people know. The more the merrier in terms of audience, and we are really looking forward to reporting on what's to come in this next week. Should be pretty intriguing.
That is like the worst thing I've ever heard in the history of the 7 years that I've been on this planet.